Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I apologize about all the screen and all this stuff. I got in trouble a few times at Asilomar for those kinds of shenanigans, so I'm really, really sorry. We were trying to get the projector to work so that, well, mostly because I can't memorize quotes anymore, and we have a wonderful quote by Dr. Holmes that I want you to see. Okay. We're good? All right. So first of all, I want to say how happy I am to be here. Thank you so much, Dr. Alice, for giving me the opportunity. And I get a little teary about it just because it really does feel so good to be home. Now, it's been a minute since I've been on a platform, and I promised myself I wasn't going to go into all the details of why that is, but I'm finding in this moment I really can't resist. So I will spare you the long, gory version and give you the short Reader's Digest version, which basically is not long after I stepped away from my position as executive director and co-pastor at Fremont, I went through a time of devastating personal loss. I lost my mom and my dad and my sister and Jay, for those of you who knew him, and then my best friend in a very short period of time, back to back to back to back. A lot of loss, a lot of grief. And then I myself was diagnosed with a rare brain tumor. So when I say I'm happy to be here this morning, I literally mean I'm happy to be anywhere this morning. And it's really good to be here with you. My physical healing journey, of course, has taken way longer than I wanted it to, because let's face it, pretty much everything takes way longer than I want it to. It happens in divine time, and after even all these years as a metaphysician, divine right time is not right for Cynthia. I really need things to go faster. But, you know, it takes what it takes, and here we are. So at this juncture, surviving all of this, the personal loss, the brain surgery, that's not what has surprised me the most lately. What has surprised me the most is how profoundly I missed being in spiritual community. And I kind of knew that, but I didn't fully know it until I walked through those very doors back in March, and I knew I'd come home. I knew I had come home. So the title of our lesson this morning, we're way ahead of what it is this, a world that values all of who we are. And I've been sitting with that title this week in anticipation of being here with you and sharing the lesson with you. And it occurred to me all along the way that we could take this topic in any number of directions, right? I mean, the first thing that springs to mind is this could be a really awesome lecture on social conscience. We could talk about the world out there and how, as metaphysicians, it's our responsibility to show up and make the world a better place. But you know what? That's not where Spirit has led me this morning, and I hope that's okay. You know, another direction we could take it would be a talk about unconditional love, unconditional self-love, unconditional love of others. And as beautiful as that sounds and as necessary as it is, we're not going in that direction either. Because here's the thing. A world that values all of who we are has absolutely nothing to do with Washington or Sacramento.
Amen.
Yeah. It does have to do with unconditional love. It absolutely has to do with unconditional love. But in order to love ourselves or others unconditionally, I truly feel we must come home to ourselves first. Okay? Because a world that values all of who we are can only be created by people who have learned to value all that they are. I'm going to just let that sink in for a second. Just breathe that in. Okay. I have a quick confession. In all the hustle and bustle and getting the tech working, the minute it got working, I, like back in the 1980s, erased my entire slide deck. Rule number 1 of technology, always save a backup copy. And you know what? That's okay. We're just going to go on the fly today. I don't have the pretty builds and all that, but here's what I do have, and you can read. And now I know we've already gone through this morning's affirmation. We've repeated it out loud. I'm going to ask you to do that again with me right now on 3. 1, 2, 3. I create bridges wherever I go. I create bridges wherever I go. Now, this is a beautiful, powerful affirmation. And I think the implication is that, especially for us, and I'm always going to come back to saying, especially for us as metaphysicians, because we are blessed with a level of awareness that not everyone in the world shares. Am I saying we're chosen, we're special? Absolutely. That's my bias, and I'm telling you right now, we're the greatest. So, yay us. So implicit in this beautiful statement is the idea, I think, that the call to action, that as metaphysicians, we show up in the world and create a bridge to the other people around us, and by extension, the entire world, thereby lifting up all of humanity to a greater experience, to its spiritual magnificence, if you will. But I wonder if the first bridge we're meant to create is the one that leads us back to ourselves. What if the first bridge we're meant to build is the one that leads us back to ourselves? It sounds good, but how do we begin? I think this morning we are perfectly poised to explore this idea. And this entire month, the lessons on Sunday have just been, as the kids say, off the chain. Over the past 3 weeks, Dr. Alice has been gently leading us inward with her wisdom and her knowledge and her beautiful way of teaching, gently leading us inward. And you know, she's encouraged us to look at the parts of ourselves that we've learned to reject in our lives. She reminded us that consciousness creates our experience. And last week, she invited us to remember that wholeness is not something we have to earn. Wholeness is who we are by our very nature. We already are whole, each and every one of us right now. So perhaps the next question is, if wholeness is already our nature, how do we return to it? How do we come home to ourselves? I'm really hoping the answer is on the next slide. Yay. Thank you, Dr. Holmes. So I had broken it up into chunks because you know how it can be with Dr. Holmes. We sometimes need to break him up into snack-sized chunks. But let's just start with what we have. There is no principle known to science that is limited by any use that was ever made of it. In a nutshell, he's saying principle is not bound by precedent, right? There is a law, the law is used, and regardless of how it has been used and by whom, that doesn't dictate that it shall always be used that way. Okay. Let's take the next little snack-sized chunk. The past does have a relationship to the present. Don't we know it? The past does have a relationship to the present and in the creation of the future. Emma Curtis Hopkins says that this way. Our lives are an exact record of our thoughts and beliefs. So wherever you are today, wherever we are today, whatever's happening in our conditions, our situation, for better or for worse, it is a consequence of our thinking, and we can change that right now. This is the beauty part of this quote. Right? Dr. Holmes continues, if we break the sequence and initiate a new chain of causation, if we break the sequence, if we don't like our experience, we can stop now and pivot. If we break the sequence and initiate a new chain of causation, then what happens? Well, then the same power that brought bondage will bring freedom. We can have a completely different experience. This is our teaching. Purely stated, breaking the chain of causation. Right. Now, I have been living with that part of the quote all week long as I've been thinking and feeling and sensing into today's lesson. Yeah. I mean, do you hear what he's saying? It's an extraordinary statement. He's saying basically that our past may have shaped us. And in the past is everything that has happened up to and including the stuff with the slides and the screens. Our past may have shaped us, but it does not define us. Mm-hmm. Right? A new chain of causation happens the moment our consciousness changes. That raises another important question, and I've had people say to me it drives them crazy when I keep asking more and more and more questions and saying, well, this raises another question. Well, you know what? That is the nature of this teaching, and it's our nature as students of science of mind. See if you remember anybody you've ever known saying this. The more we know, there's more to know. Mm-hmm. So there's always more to know. The more answers we have as students of the science of mind, the more questions arise because we're always eclipsing ourselves, our knowledge and our wisdom, our understanding, our very knowing, always. But the question all of this raises is, okay, if we're initiating a new change of causation, and we've already said we're perfectly whole by our very nature, then what is it that needs to change? It's a little funny, right, to consider that. Do we need to be more spiritual? Do we need to be more lovable? Some people maybe. Do we need to be more worthy? I don't think so. I do believe we are just fine the way we are. But what I'm realizing, especially over these last 3-ish years when I've had a lot of downtime, a lot of quiet time, a lot of stillness to be with the principle. You know, the principle that is healing my body is the principle that makes all things new in my life and my world, in me, in my core. And I'm realizing that for a long time, I think I misunderstood the meaning of spiritual growth. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm not smart and I haven't been a good student or any of those things. But what I realize is that for all these years, I have been using principle to become a better version of myself. I have been using principle to become a better version of myself. Has anyone in this room ever used principle to become a better version of yourself? Be honest. Okay. Has anyone used principle to become a better version of yourself once or twice already this morning? Mm-hmm. I am calm in the midst of technology challenges. Yeah, okay. Now, let's get serious. What if Dr. Holmes is pointing us in another direction? Of course, he would be all for using principle to eclipse ourselves, but not really to become a different version of ourselves. I take a lot of liberties in interpreting what Dr. Holmes thought and felt, and even wrote. I paraphrase really badly, but here's the thing. He passed away 5 months before I was born, and I think, you know what? I get to do that. I get to do that. And I get to say that with all of the wisdom we read in the Science of Mind and this beautiful passage we're working with this morning, I still think Dr. Holmes would say, the version of yourself you are right now is exactly right. The version of yourself you are right now is exactly right. And this cannot remain just a beautiful spiritual idea. It has to, for us to experience the good of that, to get it out of our heads, out of theory and into practice, we need a vital spiritual experience, which is an experience that's so real, it changes the way we know ourselves. We don't need to become different people. What's changing for the better is our ability to know ourselves and the way we know ourselves. And how we do that is to come home to ourselves. Because honestly, we can stand in front of a mirror every day and repeat millions of times, I am perfect, whole, and complete. And that's good. That's more than a lot of people have. That's more awareness than a lot of people have. And if we do that over and over again, but we don't believe it, then nothing will change. Not really. Because the new chain of causation doesn't happen when we just repeat new words. It begins when we decide to come home to ourselves and begin to value all of who we are. Yeah. There's nothing to fix here. We're not broken. Yeah. You know that, right? You're not broken. But your self-perception might be. Yeah. Think about that for a moment. You are perfect, whole, and complete. Wholeness is yours, our natural state of being. But our self-perception is not always laser sharp. Why is that? And I love that we get to be reminded of that here together, because here's the thing, in this teaching, we don't believe in the sort of God that looks down and says, well, this one is broken. Because if this one is broken, then that one is probably broken. And that one over there probably is broken too. And after a while, everybody starts to look broken in some way. And our judgment increases. And that feeling of separation, of otherness, creeps in. Until pretty soon, everybody except for us is other. Everybody starts to look broken in one way or another. But that is not reality at all. That's something we've learned. We're in the process always here of unlearning it, but that's something we learned maybe in childhood, from, rejection, comparison, from loss, from shame, any number of experiences we might have. All of the moments life has seemed to whisper, you're not enough. And what happens is that over time, we start believing that story. And then it gets really blurry. And trying to map back to the truth of ourselves, it gets a little more challenging. And we start believing that negative story. We believe it and we don't even know we're doing it, and it becomes imprinted on our subconscious. And that's what creates our conditioned reality. It's not reality, it's conditioned reality. But here's the beautiful thing. If we learn that story, we can unlearn it. And we don't even really have to unlearn it. We can learn the new story, the true story, which automatically and immediately supplants the fictional one that we've been drawn into. That's where a new chain of causation is created. Boom. Yeah. When we realize that we have the capacity to live from the level of unconditioned reality with a capital R, from the level of divine principle, God which makes all things possible, and law which makes all things so. And that principle is not limited by any use that has ever been made of it. Not by us or anyone else. And it's not that we've been doing it wrong at all. We haven't been doing it wrong. But the more and more we awaken, the more and more we're invited to a greater experience, to a deeper understanding, and ultimately to the full embrace of our wholeness and perfection when we come home to ourselves. Yeah. Let's recap really, really quickly. So we've been talking about, or I've been doing all the talking, I guess. I like that. I like to be able to do all the talking. We've been talking about how the collective transformation we desire to see in the world begins with a personal transformation. We move from personal transformation to collective transformation. And now you're probably wondering, how do we actually live this? Because this is the thing. Dr. Holmes says early in the pages of The Science of Mind, we tend to engage in too much theory and too little practice. Well, how can we not? It's so delicious. It's so delicious, our reading, our study. It's so good. And I guess it's okay to be an armchair metaphysician. There's nothing wrong with that. But we want to have that vital experience, don't we? Yeah. How do we do that? How do we begin a new chain of causation? Well, if we're going to stop believing the old story, how do we actually come home to ourselves? So we're going to move to the practicalities now. And practically speaking, I hope there's a slide. Yes, there is. So the Science of Mind teaching has always offered us 3 complementary pathways to spiritual growth. And the first of these is inspiration. That says inspirational. It's supposed to say inspiration. Because we need moments of stillness. Moments when we are still enough to hear something deeper than the noise of our conditioning, right? We can do this by prayer treatment, through meditation, through contemplation. Maybe you do this reclining with your eyes closed. Maybe you do it walking on the beach. And maybe you travel to Spain on pilgrimage, the way hundreds of people, thousands, possibly millions of people have done for hundreds of years. But it's about being still and focused enough to hear above the noise, beneath the noise, something other than the noise of conditioned reality. Whatever it is that opens your heart to something greater than the world of effect. Whatever brings your awareness back to cause. Does anyone here this morning have a spiritual practice that inspires you? Okay. Does anyone not, and you'd really, really love to? Don't be afraid. Raise your hand if that's you. Good. Are there any practitioners, ministers, members here this morning who are here to support people who don't know what to do next? Yeah. Okay. Look around. Right. Very, very good. Now, inspiration by itself is not enough. So the second pathway Science of Mind teaching offers us is education. Yeah. Why do we need education? Well, because sometimes we have probably most of the time, we have a wonderful experience on Sundays, don't we? The music, the people, it's so lush. And then by Tuesday, we forget everything. Can I just get a witness? And that's why we study, especially in this teaching. That's why we study. That's why Dr. Holmes and so many other great metaphysicians wrote so many books. Not because we're trying to fill our heads with more information, but so we can go deeper, and because every new idea, and that new idea may have been on that printed page or in the curriculum, or your teacher may have said it 1,000 times, but when you hear it anew, it loosens the grip of an old belief. Yeah, it does. Every class, every conversation, every page we read helps us tell a new, healthy, happy, positive story about ourselves. Now, I am going to do what I hope is a very subtle, shameless promotion of our educational program at CSL Capo Valley. Okay. Now, this center has all kinds of opportunities throughout the week, every week. In addition to that, we have new classes starting this fall. Dr. Alice will be teaching Foundations in January. There are all kinds of opportunities for everyone, people who have never taken class, people who are on a break from class, people who take classes all the time. We have class. Is anybody thinking about or excited about the possibility of being in class this fall? Very good, very good, good. So, inspiration, education. I am not going to reveal the third point because it doesn't say celebration, and that is my third point. Because there's one thing that we simply cannot create by ourselves, and that's community. It takes more than one. It takes more than me. Believe me, I know this because now that I'm with you, among you, we cannot create community on our own. Being here on Sundays, that's what celebration is. We're spiritually fed by the Sunday lessons, by the amazing music, by the love and support of the practitioners, by other members, people who look at us and see us for who we really are, even on the days when we can't. People who will allow us to borrow their faith if we're running a little bit short on our own. You know, that's why Sundays matter. We don't necessarily come here to escape the world, but we come to remember who we are. I feel good here and I feel loved here because you see me. We see each other. You know, there are all kinds of reasons to come on Sundays. One of the reasons I'm here on Sundays is because of Cheryl's potato salad. It's so good. Stop talking about potatoes. But really, I'm here because you remind me of who I am. We remind each other of who we are. This community, and I have sat there and heard people at the lectern say, we are radically inclusive. This community self-identifies as radically inclusive. That's why this is where we come alive. This is where we practice, and then we get to take that out into the world and do our part in creating a world that values all of who we are. Now, not one of these approaches stands alone. Inspiration awakens us, education deepens us, and celebration sustains us. And taken together, they become a way of life. They become our way of life. Yeah. They become a way of gently and consistently coming home to ourselves. And what happens next? Well, from here, when we come home to ourselves and we understand that if we want the world to change, we bring the best of ourselves, and we can't get that out there. That's an inside job. And as we're doing this, we become the point of integration. If you are taking notes, write this one down. We become the point of integration between the divine reality of who we are and the divine reality of who every other person in the world is. And that is how we build bridges. We are the bridge. We are the bridge. The world we envision out there begins in our own inner world, right here. When we come home to ourselves, we can begin to do our part to create a home for everyone, everywhere, where everyone belongs, a world that values all of who we are. This is the truth, and it is absolutely wonderful. And so are you, and so it is. Thank you. Please join me in consciousness. And if you're comfortable doing so, allow your eyes to close. And gently allow yourself to breathe into the core of you. This is where God lives. The ever-present, loving Creator is as close as our breath. And as I speak my word in the first person, I invite you to take it for yourself also in the first person. I know there is only one life, and that life is God. And that life is my life right now. And because this is true of me, I know it is true of every person, in fact, all of creation. Everything we see and everything we do not see, all of life. We are one with it. And as I unify now with the divine presence, by extension, I unify with all creation. And I know that for each person here this morning, there is a new awakening to the truth of wholeness. There is a deeper awareness to that truth. And that there is greater receptivity to coming home to the self and knowing not only is that enough, that is everything. Because it's all God. And as we allow ourselves to grow from that place, I know that we naturally create bridges wherever we go. I know each of us does our part to create a world that values all of who we are. And I give thanks for this, for God, for this teaching, for this community. and for the authority of my word, which goes forth to bless, to heal, and to prosper everything it touches, as I now turn it over to the law of mind to do its good and perfect work. And please say with me, and so it is.